Barigalust! Welcome to the AWWA Armenian Voices, where Armenian stories live, breathe, and are passed on. In each episode, you'll hear real Armenian voices sharing personal stories about culture, family, and identity. Stories that help us stay connected to who we are and where we come from. This week's stories are all about the power of love. We hope you enjoy this episode, brought to you by the Armenian Women's Welfare Association, AWWA, where our mission since 1915 has been to honor, uplift, and care for our elders, advocate for their voices, and honor Armenian heritage.
Thank you for giving me the chance to share part of my story. My name is Simone Rizkallah, and my story is one small piece, of course, in the larger, complicated puzzle that is the Armenian diaspora in the West. So I was born in the United States, but my roots stretch in different directions. I am Armenian, I'm Egyptian, and I'm Catholic. So that mix, it really shapes the way I see the world and the way I've learned to carry my story. Both of my parents are Armenians, and both of them were born and raised in Cairo, Egypt. They came to the United States about 40 years ago, and like a lot of people, they were looking to build something better and something more stable, both economically and also religiously. They didn't talk about it like they were doing something heroic, but I've come to realize it takes an incredible amount of courage to leave everything familiar behind and start completely over. Let me go back a little bit further to my story. My family ended up in Egypt in the first place because they were running from something. They were running from, of course, the Armenian genocide of 1915, where over 1 million Armenians were killed by the Ottoman Empire. My ancestors were some of the few who got out. And where did they go? They went to Egypt, not because it was their home, but because it was safe at the time. And that's where they started over, and that's where they rebuilt. This is the part of my story that I find really interesting, actually. More than 100 years later, no one in my family lives in Armenia. So many of us have never even visited. And yet somehow we still speak Armenian and identify as Armenian and have preserved the culture. We still eat the food, sing the songs, and live the traditions. And that didn't happen by accident. It happened because people like my grandmother made sure that we didn't forget. So I find that pretty interesting that I've never been to Armenia. My parents have never been to Armenia. My grandparents were born in Egypt. They've never been to Armenia. And yet, over the 20th century, Armenian history, culture, language was preserved. And I mentioned my grandmother, Zaruhi. She lived with us when we were growing up. She helped raise me. She passed away just before her 104th birthday. So she really saw a lot in her life, pretty much the 20th century. And she's honestly one of the strongest people I've ever known. Like many Armenian women and like many Armenian grandmothers in particular. She's not loud, she wasn't flashy, but she definitely had a dignity that you couldn't ignore. I'm so grateful to her because she taught me the Armenian language, and she taught me things about our story, not in a very formal way, but just living daily life together. I really love the stories she told me over and over again, the songs that she learned. And I really, one of my most favorite memories is just watching her drink tea and read her Armenian Bible. That's, I think, one of the most important memories that always sticks with me. I think that was probably the first time I really felt what it meant to be Armenian, is watching her listen to Armenian music, really savoring it, especially Armenian liturgical music, reading her Bible, especially someone who's lived through so much. I mean, she, was a child of Egyptian immigrants who had escaped the genocide. She eventually, with my parents, left Egypt to the United States. I mean, that's a lot to live through. And so having that thread of faith and Armenian culture was really what fueled her survival. So, all of that to say, I feel like I've received this huge inheritance, which goes beyond language or food or history, but something spiritual that is part of who I am and who we are as a people. Growing up, this was not easy. Always felt like I had to, balance, manage various identities. The Armenian one, the Egyptian one, the Egyptian-Armenian flavor, that combination. Obviously, I'm American. I'm also Catholic, Armenian Catholic. And sometimes that layering is a bit confusing, especially when I was younger. Now I kind of can sort it out a little bit more clearly. But it is really my Armenian side that gives me a very deep sense of history and of belonging to a story that's much older and much bigger than my own. Egypt, of course, is our safe space for a time, not for a long, long time, about 100 years, about a century, but still for a time that I'm very grateful for. Egyptian culture is very warm, is very hospitable. And I love that about Egyptian culture. And I think the Armenians who went to Egypt for safety really embraced Egyptian culture. And there's a lot of history and legacy of Armenians in Egypt. I think that story in and of itself is a very good one, and one that I probably cherish more than any other part of my story. America, of course, the United States gave us freedom and a place to integrate all of these things, but the culture here is not Eastern. It's very Western. So again, there's that, I have an Eastern sensibility with a Western mentality, which I think many Christians from the Near East feel that tension. I think what I love most about my Armenian heritage, of course, is family. And I think loyalty, the kind of unspoken, built-in closeness and humor. I think Armenians can find something to laugh about even in the middle of total chaos, because everybody's story is a little bit melancholic, because somewhere in everyone's Armenian story is something very tragic with the massacres. And I think that's the kind of the dark side, is that when you come from a community that's shaped by trauma, there's a lot of fear that runs underneath the surface, which is a survival instinct. When I was growing up, we didn't really have a category of generational trauma. That's something that people talk about more easily now, which I'm grateful for, because it gives a name and a category for our experience. But, it's not a shock that the friends that I made in the United States were children also of immigrants, whether they were, Middle Eastern immigrants or not. But it seemed to be that kind of anxiety, survival instinct, generational trauma. And I just kind of gravitated towards children of other immigrants because we had kind of shared experiences. So that's kind of the flip side of the gift of being Armenian-Egyptian. But I think it's more positive than anything else, because the Armenian spirit truly never refuses to give up. Even though we're small, we're mighty. We've lasted through so much, I think, under God's providence. Our history shows, my goodness, like we've outlasted other kingdoms, empires, invasions, genocide, earthquakes. But we're still here. We're still praying and giving glory to God. We're still showing up at church, and we're still passing on our stories. So I'm grateful for that. And I think it's more positive than negative. I would say for most Armenians, although I can't possibly say I speak for all Armenians, faith isn't something that's separate from our identity. It's part of our foundation. Even if you're not personally as religious, to be an Armenian is to be a Christian. And I think we're very proud of the fact that we were the first nation to officially adopt Christianity as our state religion in 301 AD. That's even before, that's a decade before the Roman Empire even just legalized it, we not only legalized it, we made it official in Armenia. And I think that's such a neat historical fact and something that we're really, really proud of. So again, I think I mentioned I'm Catholic. I'm not Roman Catholic. I'm Armenian Catholic. There are 24 Catholic churches. The biggest one, the most popular one is obviously the Roman Catholic Church, but there's 23 Eastern Catholic churches, and the Armenian Catholic Church is one of those 23. Most Armenians are not Catholic. They're part of the Apostolic Church, but the Armenian Catholic community is vibrant too, and we consider ourselves just as much, obviously, a part of the Armenian global community as anyone else. But it is another kind of minority within a minority. I think I can't really share this story without sharing about my Uncle John, technically my cousin John, but he told me a story. He's told me many stories about our Armenian background, but his father, my great uncle, lost his entire family to the Armenian genocide. Every single person in his family was massacred. He was the only one who survived. And somehow, instead of becoming bitter, my great uncle lived with purpose. And his son, my Uncle John, said something that has always stayed with me. To know your Armenian history is to know your identity. That phrase has always stuck with me. It's been a compass in my life. And in a world where people are constantly being told to let go of who they are, to assimilate, to flatten everything into homogeny, sameness, we can't do that. We bring our kind of particularity, our distinctive culture, and make whatever culture, society we are in better, while still maintaining our unique Armenian individuality. So it's not really about being stuck in the past or just being romantic or nostalgic, but just recognizing that we come from a certain place with certain gifts, and that matters for who we are as individual people, who we are as a community, and that memory that becomes alive today really matters in how we approach the way that we live. So cultural preservation matters a lot to me. Again, it's not about being nostalgic, but honoring the inheritance and the great gift we've been giving as being Armenians and as being Christians, and particularly Christian Armenians, how we live our faith, our personality, our unique flavor in the world. I think it's a great, great gift. I feel very privileged, without being proud, but privileged to be part of this tribe of people. And that's what I carry with me every day, the good, the bad. And I would say that my grandmother, and I know Armenians love our elderly, we love our grandparents, we especially love, I think, the women in our family, very matriarchal. Our grandmothers are our queens. I think my grandmother, for me, embodies the best of what Armenian faith and culture has to offer. She's my hero, my touchstone, and everything that I participate and do for the Armenian community and for advocacy is inspired by my deep, deep, profound love for her. And I'm so glad that I had her for so long, because not many people have their grandmothers live until one month shy of 104. But that kind of resiliency, I think, so much embodies what it means to be Armenian. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to our podcast today. We hope today's episode offered insight into the Armenian experience. To explore more resources or make a donation to help further our mission, please visit www.awwainc.org. That's www.awwainc.org. Your support makes a lasting difference.